The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
It's the Best Birth Podcast, where we interview experts that elevate you as you prepare your heart and mind to have the best birth.
Each episode will interview professionals so you are prepared for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Our experts will build your confidence and empower you to trust your intuition throughout your pregnancy.
This audio is taken from videos on YouTube. Watch the entire episodes on YouTube at Birth Made Mindful. Welcome to the Best Birth Podcast. We are here today with Kaitlyn McEntire, a photographer and videographer for birth, a doula, and a bereavement photographer and doula.
Kaitlyn McEntire is a birth and motherhood photographer, videographer, and doula based in Colorado Springs. She serves families that value authenticity, abundance, and community, giving them a photography experience unlike any other. Luxurious support and emotional embrace, dual photo video documentation, doula support for birthing families, and meaningful, tangible art to hold on to daily for the rest of their lives. Alongside her birth and motherhood work, aka maternity, newborn, and family photography, she donates her energy in the bereavement space, giving families experiencing pregnancy and infant loss meaningful images of and with their babies, and supporting other bereavement photographers that do the same. She's excited to start a bereavement nonprofit in her area soon. Welcome, Kaitlyn.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be with you.
Good to have you. Tell us more about your journey into photography and doula work.
Yeah, I would say very similar to many other doulas and birth photographers. It was the birth of my first that called me deep into birth world. Just that gap and space and that call. Like, this is where you're supposed to be, Kaitlyn. This is a good space, and there's lots to do here. So shortly after my first, I photographed my first birth for a good friend, and that was amazing. And it was at that birth I came as a photographer, but realized I am not just a photographer. I am not going to be just a fly on the wall. I am there for you. I am all in for you. And so then I took a doula training shortly thereafter, right at the beginning of COVID. And then later that year, I photographed my first birth. I also photographed my first bereavement for a sweet family. They knew that she was going to pass. She had a heart condition. And so it was just a beautiful, death and birth are both beautiful, sacred spaces. Death is obviously a little more uncomfortable and not as joyful typically, but it was, again, that call of like, this is an important space to be in. There's important work to do here. Big gaps in support, big gaps in community, and all of that. So the journey has grown from there. I've taken a number of trainings. I'm a certified birth photographer. True Birth Becomes You, a certified doula, and then have taken some important trainings that have helped me serve lost families.
Isn't it interesting how COVID changed the landscape for birth, only being limited to one person in the birthing room? And so a lot of our doulas or photographers kind of had to do double duty.
It is interesting. I do love it, though. I love getting to, I feel like, support families fully, because processing your birth afterwards and honoring it, in great part for most of my clients, all of them, includes documenting and viewing their galleries and seeing their films, their videos. That's a huge part, processing and, yeah, embracing that journey.
When you're supporting someone in birth, do you ever feel like there's a conflict in wanting to offer that doula support and then capture the moment?
Occasionally, but there's usually little spaces. So it's those small spaces and gaps sometimes. And I have a conversation with my clients. If my clients are very hands-on and it's very important to them to document, I do usually recommend that they get a dedicated doula. So then they have someone to be there hands-on with them the whole time. But most of my clients are usually a little more hands-off or have a partner that wants to be there for them. And so I'm mostly supporting them, giving them breaks, guiding them, providing emotional support is huge for most of my clients. Like, I just want to know you're there to help me process what's happening and get back into that headspace.
Do you feel that comes mainly from speaking positively or like affirming what they're doing? Or is that actually through physical touch?
Sometimes it's both. Yes. It's different for everybody, right? So sometimes that's simply putting a hand, like her on their heart space, being like, hey, I'm here, or noticing, being mindful with them. Hey, I noticed that those past few contractions, you looked really uncomfortable. Do you want to move positions? Like, do you want to go somewhere else? Yes, I think I do. I'm not sure. Well, let's move. Just kind of encouraging that self-trust and the journey.
I'm curious. So the nickname is Doula Tog for
Yeah.
your position. Do most clients come seeking the photography and they find out you're a doula, or do they specifically look out a doula tog?
I would say that they often come looking for both because there's not that many that do both. Okay, mostly they'll come to me looking for photography and be like, "Oh, I also saw you do doula support. Like that would be really cool to have a doula in the room." So there are other doula togs that they get the other way because they're primarily a doula, and then they also provide photography.
It really is a beautiful combination. And just like you said, it is hard to just be a fly on the wall if you were just a photographer and not want to reach out that hand and show that compassion that is so, it's just like a part of you, who you are, wanting to offer your support and your love and show everybody how a supported birth can change the environment. It can change the atmosphere, and it can allow for the whole family, right? If there's a partner involved. I want to speak a little bit about partner support. So doulas offer support to a birthing person. And oftentimes, if there is a partner involved, the doula can offer support to that person as well. What happens when a person is choosing or finds themselves birthing alone? Do they typically seek out a doula?
I would say they often do, or a good family friend that acts in that space of doula, or both. So it's not always a romantic partner that necessarily joins in the birth space, but sometimes it's your mom or a best friend. Like, I'm feeling alone, I need support. So sometimes they'll come, but sometimes it will be just a doula and birthing with a single parent that's just by themselves. And so that doula support can really make a difference.
I was introduced to a nonprofit organization called Embrace Grace recently, and their mission is to help support individuals who are choosing or find themselves birthing alone.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of wonderful doulas that will typically either donate their time and support to single parents or be able to offer at least a sliding scale.
In your experience with photography and videography, has it changed the way you view birth?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like I see deeper. And so I have seen more births because of my birth work, obviously. And that has deepened that appreciation. And my bereavement work definitely changes how I see birth. It's just a different world when you know that babies die. And the risks are a little more real. So I'm a little more risk averse than many. But it also brings this depth of appreciation of life and sacredness and, yeah, the dual.
Your position as a bereavement doula, what are the main things that you offer for the family?
So it's different depending on each family and each of their circumstances, but often I come into the bereavement space holding space for whatever feels that they have in the moment. And then also one of my main goals is to help facilitate them in making memories with their baby. So often that's with a stillborn. And so their baby's already passed, already dead. So they're just spending the time that they have physically with their baby. And so there are some memories that they can make with them and that those memories can help process with those grief. So that is often photography. I always photograph when I come to that bereavement space, unless the family requests it, not requests specifically that I don't photograph. But also like bathing baby or reading a book to them or singing songs, simple things, making handprints and foot molds and some of those physical, tangible things. So like baby has touched touch these items.
Are you also there with the funeral arrangements and the funeral process, or is that?
Not typically. That's a service that I hope to be able to provide through a nonprofit that I'm working on building here. Being able to coordinate with different funeral homes and refer families, hey, this funeral home is really wonderful for working with stillbirth families or those type of things. But usually it's more in the moment, and then they have other resources that support them.
Tell us more about this nonprofit and the mission that you hope to fulfill.
Yeah, so the nonprofit foundation is called Star Legacy, the Star Legacy Foundation. I believe they're based in the Minnesota area, but they have 5 different arms that they work on. So they have a strong research arm. So they're doing some research into stillbirth so that they can increase prevention, which is wonderful. And then they also have an advocacy arm. Through their different chapters, they advocate for like policies that are statewide or policies within workspaces that support families that lose, including miscarriage, and just having those policies that support them and help them feel seen and make that process easier. Because sometimes legislation can make the process of saying goodbye to your baby extremely difficult, which is unnecessary. There's plenty of grief already. We don't need more. And then there's also awareness and education. So they have some classes that I think we'll provide to our community here in supporting families, and then also supporting providers in providing more thoughtful care to lost families, which is huge. And then also a support arm. So that might look like your more common support groups or events that we'll put together to build the community here so that other lost families can meet lost families like them. And so that there's a community there. There's not a place where you can speak about grief and about your experience and not feel as judged or, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here.
Alone.
Alone. Yeah. Less alone. So
The work that you're doing in the bereavement space is so important. And like you said, there's a huge gap in the amount of people who are able to offer these resources and, just for families looking for help and support during this time.
absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of families that feel pretty silenced and alone in that process. They just are alone, and there's not a lot offered often. Some places are better than others, and some are more awful than others in the amount of support sometimes. So yeah, increasing that amount of support so people feel seen and not shamed and silenced and suppressed.
Before we leave this topic of bereavement, was there anything else you wanted to say to our listeners?
I mean, the idea of death is really scary, but simply going in and understanding that that's a possibility can really help, and can help you empathize a little better with those that do lose. Miscarriage is very common, and also I think we're getting better at talking about it and better about supporting it. And so just the more that we're aware of what is happening, the better you can do to help both prevent it and support those that go through it. And I think simply knowing that there is support, there are, as I've spoken about what I do, there are so many others that want to do that work. And so chances are that there are birth photographers that offer bereavement support and photography, that making those memories is worth it. And so if you ever find yourself in that position, or a friend, reach out to your community. There's likely people that want to give and serve. And yeah, I know a lot of them.
And for anybody else who wants to reach out and give and serve, you can also connect with this nonprofit that will be linked in our show notes.
Yeah, I wanted to.
You photograph women at their most vulnerable states. How has that experience been in witnessing body image and processing body image?
Powerful. In very short, it is just something beautiful to be welcomed into a space where there's this trust, and where we can sit and embrace what is. And so a lot of my maternity, newborn, pregnancy, postpartum sessions, I love to include more quote unquote traditional portions. So wear clothes. I'm a little more candid. And so having those interactions as a family or embracing all those things, and then saving time at the end to kind of remove the layers that say, hey, I'm pretty imperfect. And just get down to that. Here I am. This is where I am in my pregnancy and my postpartum. This is how I'm changing. And then just sitting there with it, embracing it. And I think that is deeply powerful, because then I create art out of those moments. Those moments are worth making art out of. And so seeing then my clients view their images and their films afterwards, and seeing themselves as powerful and beautiful and worth celebrating in the body that they are in and in the experience that they're in is really, it's profound. And that's why I do my work.
It's been so refreshing to see on social media a little bit more realness, even the celebrities, showing them pumping, showing their stretch marks, showing the real life of a mother in the postpartum period, or showing themselves in their pregnancy, that it's not just glamour and beauty and Photoshop.
Yeah, I think we crave that and we crave that authenticity, that realness that grounds us a little bit more in a world that's lots of things. And so I think that authenticity is really deep, and we crave that connection and authenticity.
I love this perspective, because I know in my experience, I tend to want to fast forward all of that phase, but I'm getting more comfortable with, like you said, sitting in it, celebrating it, and acknowledging that it happened and it's part of the process. And as more people share, then we feel not as alone or unique in our image as it transitioned.
Yeah, especially in body image specifically. Like, I think there's those pressures, right, that say, hey, you need to be a pretty pregnant person and have not huge boobs and be big, but not that big, and be smooth. But I think we're fighting back on those. And so now we try to embrace, like, oh, hey, there are different body sizes. We want to be inclusive. We want to celebrate your stretch marks. And then postpartum, that no, you don't need to bounce back, quote unquote, because who does? And just like, again, sitting with it. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, and it's important to embrace that as well. But yeah, body image is huge. And I think we're doing a good job at pushing back on those beautiful standards of society that say we should be skinny and perfect and beautiful.
We're definitely doing a better job. We love the author Brené Brown, and in her book, Gifts of Perfection, she says, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from each other. And I think just thinking about our connections with each other, is feeling seen, feeling heard, being able to witness the beautiful transformation that takes place when someone gets pregnant and their body changes, and when their body changes in the reverse after postpartum, and seeing a woman who is healthy and active and vibrant, loving and holding and running after her baby. And I think that a lot of times we get into a state where we say, okay, like now it's time to get your body back, or like, do you have your body back? Or I remember specifically being at a family event and having somebody else said, well, you finally got your body back. And just feeling a little offended, but also feeling like, that's okay. If this is something that they value and they want to speak to that, then I should take it as a compliment and not feel offended that I gained weight during pregnancy and that my body changed during pregnancy. I knew that that would be the case. And I was comfortable with the changes my body had made. I love my body. I embrace my body. I celebrate my body and everything that it has been through. And helping other women to see their bodies, just like you said, that's such a beautiful gift that you can give them through this art that they can hold on to forever.
And I think, again, it's a little cringe because you never go back. Our goal isn't to go back to ourselves, maybe to come back to ourselves, but not to get our bodies necessarily back. It's to move forward. We change. That's just how life is. And so the better we can embrace that and accept that we're changing, the more that we'll be able to sit in our power and do things and live and celebrate and enjoy life for what it is. And and to hold space for when it's hard. So it's not about going backwards. We want to move forward.
And that comes with practice and knowledge and experience. Maybe the woman who had that comment wasn't as far along on the path there.
It was a man.
Oh, there you go. It was a man. Maybe
Exactly.
he wasn't as far on the path as understanding the beauty in bodies and just the changes and the acceptance and the love that comes.
Yeah, it was some interesting feels there in terms of people commenting on your body size. And again, we're shifting from a world where your body size is very important and women's bodies are important as to your value, to let's see you as a person and let's celebrate who you are, not what you are.
There's a fabulous book called More Than a Body, written by my friends Lexi Kite and Lindsay Kite. They just speak so profoundly about your body is not an ornament. Your body is an instrument. And celebrating that body, rejoicing in that body, and learning about a lot of the companies that have been built around the idea that our bodies need to look and feel a certain way. Just the billion-dollar industry that it is, for us to look at our bodies imperfectly.
Going into birth, how can we cultivate more of a mindset mentally of our bodies and the changes they will undergo?
We're talking about wanting that positive mindset instead of self-judging.
Yeah, going into pregnancy to prepare.
Yeah, it's a process, but in terms of your pregnancy journey and just learning to embrace your body, it's a process. We understand where those pressures come from. They want us to be skinny, want us to be nice looking to other people. And then simply sitting with those feels is really big. So getting to notice them, being mindful and present. So just simply noticing the changes can make a big difference. And noticing when you feel judgment about them. Like, oh, I feel uncomfortable that my belly is ginormous. I feel uncomfortable that my breasts are bigger. It's okay to feel uncomfortable about it. And so sitting with that is a big part of that process. Give your space to be uncomfortable. And then also that will allow room to acknowledge self-love and say, oh, yes, I'm uncomfortable that this is different. And it's okay that I'm changing. It's okay that I am growing a human. That's what I want to do. It's okay that I am expanding myself to make room for another person, to grow our family, to grow myself. Yes, this is hard and it's joyful at the same time. So that noticing is very, very powerful. And it doesn't have to be rosy at the beginning. It's a process.
I love those examples of positive self-talk. Thank you for walking us through some of those.
We love to share resources on the podcast. Do you have any favorite books or resources you'd like to share?
Hey, I also love Brené Brown, so I love that you brought her up. She has a podcast that is fantastic. Therapy Uncensored is also a wonderful podcast that is not necessarily birthy per se, but they go through a lot of those mental, emotional processes that are wonderful and helpful to understand, like, what am I thinking? What am I growing into?
Are there components of body image and these mental shifts that we've been talking about related to birth and the birthing process? And how does it relate to bodily autonomy in birth?
Ooh, that is a good question. I'm not sure I see a lot of body self-consciousness in the birth space. That might be particularly because those people that hire me as a birth photographer have already moved through that self-consciousness. They value documenting their birth much more than being a pretty birther or a quiet birther or a quiet parent with perfect children. This is life. So I don't see a lot of that, but I think part of the process of deciding that you want to document your birth does also mean that, you embrace your body as you are.
I know there are conversations that you can have with your provider as well if you feel uncomfortable being touched without announcement. They're doing a great job if you are feeling self-conscious. The element of jumping on the scale at every appointment and having a nurse or a doctor just like announce your numbers. If that makes you feel uncomfortable and you'd like them to just record that in your chart, you don't even have to look at your chart to then find out what those numbers are. So if it's something that you want to say, hey, I know this is important for your data for the purpose of this appointment, but for me, I'm not interested in knowing that number on the scale. I'm healthy. I'm focused on growing this baby. I think sometimes psychologically, just putting that element behind us for pregnancy can be really beneficial.
Especially if you have a history of eating disorders, that can be very triggering. And so, yes, absolutely. Your provider should be willing to help you and support you. And so if you simply say, I really don't want to see the number on the scale, can I stand backwards? And please don't tell me what my numbers are unless they're drastically off and I need to understand that something's probably wrong. Please don't tell me anything about my weight. Absolutely.
Crystal has our Mom Squad secret, and she says, listen to birth affirmations and practice relaxation. And I think this goes right along with our conversation today, just about the mental space and the tools we can utilize both to prepare and in the moment.
Kaitlyn McEntire, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We have appreciated this conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. We hope you've been elevated and inspired by this week's expert.
Subscribe today so you never miss an episode. And please share our podcast or post on your social media so that other moms and dads-to-be can also have the best birth.
Please note that the information provided is based on the expert's insights and personal experience. It is not intended as medical guidance. Please seek the advice of your medical provider as it applies to your specific condition.